Hello and welcome to the second episode in our series A Life in Horror. This episode we look at the year I turned 1 year old, 1979. Hello and welcome to Everything Fear. I'm Kit Tinsley. I'm a horror author, film academic and general horror geek. If you enjoy this video, if you could subscribe, give us a like and maybe tickle that bell icon to get notified when we upload new content, that would be fantastic, thank you. So this is episode 2 of our series A Life in Horror, where each episode I look at my top 5 favourite horror movies from every year I've been alive. And today is the year I turned 1 year old, 1979. Let's get started. At number 5 we have Dracula, directed by John Badham. Following a successful run on Broadway, it was decided that it was time for another screen adaptation of Bram Stoker's infamous Count. This time Dracula was played by the awesome Frank Langella, who had been playing him on stage on Broadway. Director John Badham brought together an awesome cast of mainly British actors like Sir Laurence Olivier, Donald Pleasance to support Langella in this film. The movie is lavishly designed and shot, very romantic looking. In fact, the film portrays Dracula as a sexy, romantic character whose victims are more than willing to show him their necks. The film was heavily influenced by Freud's psychosexual theory and is just a beautiful work of art, really, and one of the most underrated adaptations, I think. Langella himself gives a fantastic performance in a much softer, more romantic version of the Count than we'd seen before, and I think this was probably a big influence on Gary Oldman's performance years later. Number 4, The Brood. David Cronenberg is the undisputed king of body horror. During his career, he has made films that explore the destructive effects that things like disease, drugs and technology can have on this fragile thing we call the human body. In The Brood, he looks at the devastating effect that motherhood can have on a woman's body and mind. He takes these themes into the film and, of course, makes the most extreme allegory that he can. The film deals with the effects of parental neglect and abuse, as well as divorce, and how these things can literally create little monsters. Number 3, Phantasm, directed by Don Coscarelli. Phantasm is a very strange film. More like watching a fever-inspired nightmare unfold than a traditional film. The film exudes a deeply unsettling vibe all the way through. Its strangeness unnerves the viewer, making its moments of horror and gore even more effective. From its iconic silver bulls to the truly terrifying performance of Angus Scrimm as the Tall Man, Phantasm works as one of the scariest and weirdest horror films ever made. Number 2, The Amityville Horror. Based on the book by Jay Anson, The Amityville Horror recounts the allegedly true story of the Lutz family and the 28 days they spent living in a notoriously haunted house. Whether you believe the true story or not, The Amityville Horror works superbly as a haunted house movie. It builds the tension so slowly and carefully before reaching a fever pitch at its climax. The acting in this film is phenomenal, particularly from James Brolin and his portrayal of George Lutz. He plays a man slowly spiralling into insanity as the house infects his personality. It's a wonderful and subtle performance that is so much better than what Ryan Reynolds did with the character in the remake. I like Ryan Reynolds, but James Brolin as George Lutz is just superb. He goes from handsome and healthy to wild-eyed and sickly looking throughout the runtime of the film. It's a very subtle and controlled performance. Number 1, my favourite horror movie of 1979, is also, strangely, the first horror movie I ever remember seeing, and that is Alien by Ridley Scott. As I say, it's the first horror film I remember seeing. And I say horror film rather than sci-fi because if you took all of the science fiction elements out of this film, it would still work perfectly as a horror movie. It's basically a slasher movie set in space. Originally titled Star Beast, the film could have been a very silly and schlocky affair had it not been for the vision of Ridley Scott. His decisions on how the movie was shot and to bring in H.R. Giger as a designer for the alien world and the alien creature take the film to a whole nother level. Giger designed a creature that was truly alien, unlike anything that had ever been seen on film before. The creature was a biomechanical, psychosexual nightmare, as beautiful as it was utterly terrifying. Add to that a super talented ensemble cast, a female hero, and some of the best special effects that had ever been seen on film up until that time. And what you end up with is a masterpiece of pure cinematic terror. A film that remains as powerful 4 decades later as it was the day it was released. So often imitated, never bettered. Thank you very much. If you agree with my list, let me know. If you disagree, let me know in the comments below. This is of course just my opinion. I'd love to hear what your favourite films of 1979 were. Until next time, stay scared.